I'll just show you right now. Right? 1, 2. You seriously read book? Don't lie. How many of you read books? So that's very important to understand that we are a dying breed of reading books. How many of you have written any book? Raise your hand. You written a book? No, you didn't write the Quran. Brother, come on. Don't make a fitna for us over here. So the purpose of this program is to inspire, motivate young writers and encourage the youth to get in the habit of reading and writing books, transforming society through books, communicating through education and learning, right? So let me, that was the introduction I had in terms of a family relationship. He's like family to me. But the official introduction, I'll say that our brother Amer Nazar is a Pakistani-American writer and healthcare technology leader based in Apex, North Carolina. So he drove almost 8-9 hours from North Carolina all the way to Fords. So please, big takbir for his driving. We welcome you, Brother Amer, to our masjid. We give you a warm welcome that you have done this extra effort all the way driving to our masjid to share your book and your ideas and thoughts. By the way, don't take any books or samosas. They are for sale. So please, Salih, keep an eye on it. No kid takes the samosa. We have samosa and books. At the end, you can buy it, inshallah, and Amer can sign it and autograph it. By day, he helps healthcare organizations implement innovative technology solutions, and in his spare time, he explores the art of storytelling. Drawing from the warmth, realities, and complexities of growing up between cultures, Amer's debut book, No Samosa is Worth This, captures the shared experience of being raised in the Pakistani Muslim community here in America through stories that are equal parts hilarious, heartfelt, and thought-provoking. Amer believes that every person has a story worth telling. I agree with that. And he hopes his writing helps people laugh a little, reflect a little, and leave feeling a little more connected to one another. So sit back and relax, tighten your waist belt, enjoy the ride. We're going to have a nice, hilarious roller coaster next 25 minutes with some jokes and some seriousness and some conversations, inshallah. So without further ado, I'd like to start off with my first question to our brother Amer. Let's make it like a conversation, inshallah. So can you tell our audience and share your background, that your profession and how through your profession you developed this idea of writing a book, and what sparked in your mind to actually write this book? How did it start off? Like just a small snippet synopsis so people can think, because nobody wakes up one day in the morning on the bed and say, hey, I want to write a book. No samosa was worth this. So give us some idea and background, Shell.
Perfect. Can you guys hear me? Cool. So I will start by saying this.
Keep it close.
Keep it close, okay. Please forgive me if I sound a little bit nervous. The last time I sat in front of a crowd like this in a masjid, I went home married. So, you know, just having flashbacks.
They're not hearing. Actually, you need to take this.
This is better. Okay.
Go over it.
All right, how about now? Can you hear? Oh. How about now? Does that work?
Or if you hold this one like this, you gotta hold it.
गलती से खा ना जाओ ना, ये मसला था.
You have to learn the art of microphone.
The art of microphone, exactly.
Yeah, an imam can teach you what the art of microphone is.
Inshallah, inshallah.
Please, go ahead.
So, Jazakallah khair for coming out, everybody. Inshallah, as I was saying, if I sound nervous, please forgive me. The last time I stood or sat in front of a crowd like this in a masjid, I went home married, and that was a terrifying experience, so just bear with me, inshallah.
I hope your wife didn't come here today.
No, she's watching online.
Then it's
so. There's a good 500 miles between us, so we're good right now. So, alhamdulillah, my background. So I am, alhamdulillah, as Jawad mentioned, a healthcare nerd. I enjoy going into hospitals and, you know, annoying doctors with recommendations for changes and stuff like that. My professional career had nothing to do with my writing journey, actually. A couple of years ago, I was, you know, on social media, and I connected with some old friends and was invited to join a group of Muslim writers. It's a group that was founded in Maryland, alhamdulillah. We're all over the world now. It's called called Muslim Youth Musings, or MYM. And, I joined, the writings were a little bit more serious. My first piece with them was an essay. And then one night, a bunch of us were in our text group chatting, and somebody dropped a writer's prompt. The prompt was basically the house on the street, the house at the end of the street was ... and then basically instructed us to finish the story. And, given the state of the world today, the state of the economy, everybody was writing very serious stories that were talking about homes left behind in Palestine, homes left behind due to financial crisis and things like that. And I said, you know what? I need to bring some levity into this process. And I proceeded to write the first story in the book, which is basically a young guy, presumably myself, goes to a dawat at the house at the end of the street and is accosted by a panel of aunties who are basically putting him through the ringer in terms of, beta, why aren't you married yet? Why haven't you done a degree yet? Why didn't you become a doctor? Shagufta's son did this, and so on and so on. Basically the stories that we've all heard already. And I presented it to the group, and mashallah, the group loved it. And from there, it turned into, we want to hear another one. We want to hear another one. And about 5 stories later, we were like, okay, you know what? Let's turn this into a book. And so from there, bismillah, a very short year later, alhamdulillah, No Samosa is Worth This was born and published. So we launched it earlier this year.
So tell us, what does the title mean? What is the this in the sentence?
So everybody here has been to a dinner party or dawat, I presume, right? Oh, please don't look at me like that. I don't want to have to explain what a dawat is. Okay. So
you can ask, who hasn't been to a dawat?
Who hasn't been to a dawat? Let's start with that. Okay, good. Otherwise, we'd have to host one, and that'd be a problem. But imagine, the one snack that's almost at every single dawat is always a samosa, right? And we go to the dawats, and oftentimes we're happy to see them there because, alhamdulillah, we're going to be nourished, we're going to be refreshed, we're going to have a good time eating them. Except every now and then you go to a dawat, and that one auntie or uncle starts making their way towards you, and you know that there's a question coming. So what do you say? You say, oh my God, this samosa is not worth this. You put it on the plate, and you make a run for it. And so when I was writing the story, when I was writing the stories in this book, as I looked at how people would react if they were in those situations, that was the title that came to mind.
So what is the book really about? What are you trying to relay to the audiences, to the society?
So the subject of the book is basically a social commentary told through satire and reflection about what it was like growing up as a Pakistani American-born Muslim kid. But it's told through the instances of It's told through the instances of uncle and auntie stories and the interactions that we have with them growing up. Now, before everybody gets concerned, it's written from a humorous but largely respectful standpoint. The idea was not to cause controversy or to be offensive or anything like that, but the idea is instead to, in one generation, show everybody that we all lived through some of the same events or occurrences, and then also for across the generations to show people what we all went through. And I use the word uncle and auntie subjectively, right? Like, my parents' friends were uncles and aunties to me. To my parents, their parents' friends were uncles and aunties to them, and I'm now unfortunately old enough that there are kids running around that call me uncle, and uncle thought he could write a book. So, when you think about it that way, my goal was to make it a transgenerational communication tool. In a perfect world, a father and a son, or a mother and daughter, or vice versa, a father and daughter, mother and son, could read the book together and hopefully have a conversation about what really went on. And the way the book is written is there's a couple of chapters that talk about what life may have been like from the uncle and auntie's experiences. Despite all the shenanigans and despite all the complaints one generation might have against another, we can't forget that a previous generation also, traveled across the world with no resources, with no support, with no backup, and gave us the lives that we have here today. So there is a story in that chapter as well, or in that part of our history that needs to be addressed and that needs to be discussed.
So basically you're saying that you're bridging the gap between two generations. Like, your parents are first generation immigrants. I know your parents, I know your grandfather also, who came from England all the way here, and then your mother and her side coming from Pakistan. So first generation immigrant parents come here, raise a child like you, born and raised in USA in Maryland. Second generation Muslim, you are a parent, not a parent now, but you are now a level of that parent and uncle. So you're trying to portray in this book the differences or the similarities between first generation immigrant parents and second generation American Muslim kids. So my question is, how much of your experiences growing up as the son of immigrant parents in Maryland is relayed in this book, so that we see a lot of young kids over here, they're also second generation, because immigrants have been coming. You know, your parents came in the 90s or maybe 80s. We have still people coming in 2000, 2010s, 2020, even 2026. We have people landing here. So there are some kids here, they're still second generation American Muslim kids because their parents just came 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So how would you relay this book to these kids who are now growing up in 2026 to relate to a child who grew up in the 90s and wrote this book?
You know, it's interesting that you asked that, because people, as you mentioned, you know, the immigrant arrival spans generations. There are people who came here in the 70s that have read this book. There are people that came here in the 80s that read this book. So I will say, inshallah, alhamdulillah, since we launched it, I would say a group spanning 3 or 4 generations has read this book, and they all come back, and one of the most common comments I've gotten from everybody is, wow, we had no idea that everybody else also experienced this. So, you know, as somebody reads it, you know, we always hope that the next generation has it, quote unquote, better than we did, or has it more enjoyable than we did. But my hope would be that if the next generation reads this, they find a story that they may have experienced, and they know that there's an older brother, older sister out there, or a parent, or an uncle, or an auntie, or, you know, insert title, cha-cha, chachi, taya, tao, whatever, who also experienced this. And, you know, maybe it prompts them to reach out, or maybe it prompts one of the older folks to reach out and say, let's talk.
Does your book bridge the cultural differences gap? Because the American Muslim kids growing up in this country, they have a different mindset. And the immigrant parents who came here, they have a different mindset. So how do you address that issue of perspectives, you know?
So I think any book that tried to holistically address that gap would be 15,000 pages long. This book is a start in that direction, and the idea is, you know, that becomes what you're asking, what you're describing, is no longer a process. Is no longer a simple, I read in the book and I found the answer. It's a process. It's a conversation that has to span generations, right? It has to span. It's not a single sit down and say, hey, I read this. Do you want to talk about it? No, this is a conversation which then turns into communication, which then turns into a cultural shift, and you know, it can go into character, it can go into habits, and it really comes down to how the individual decides to take it.
I read some part of the books. I would encourage all of you also, if you can, buy it. I know you discussed some characters. Obviously, they are generic names. You're not mentioning any people, but the characters in your book, how would you portray them to an audience here that would entice them to read the book? Like, who do you talk about in your chapters?
I talk about us, the collective us. You know, there's a character in this book that relates to everybody in this room or everybody out there. You know, now whether it's a good character or a bad character, you know, or a hybrid of the two is really subjective. But the idea is to capture both sides of those coins, and the identities that we all embody, you know, and I use the word I use identities as a plural because we change, our perspectives change, we learn, we grow, we develop, some of us regress, and that's okay, that's part of life as long as we're willing to rebound back. So the book really is meant to be holistic. It's meant to encompass all of us.
And my next question is, what is your goal in life to achieve with this book? Like, where do you see yourself 5 years from now, 10 years from now with this book, and what do you want the Muslims, American Muslim society, to learn from this book?
I want people to just understand, develop a better understanding of each other, right? Whether it's that we all come to understand that we all at some level, and my perspective is the American-born Pakistani child, but it's not that different from the American-born Indian child. It's not that different from the Canadian-born Pakistani child, and in a lot of ways, it might not even be that different from the American-born Egyptian child, or, you know, insert cultural background here. I wrote what I knew, but these cultural gaps, these generational gaps are in every culture. And the idea is that somebody would read this book, somebody would understand, you know, after the humor, after the enjoyment, that, you know, we're all just people, that there is gaps that can be filled by communication, and perhaps motivate us to start having those conversations. Now, it's actually funny. This is actually what you guys are seeing in front of you today is the 4th or 5th version of this book.
Oh.
The first draft was actually, it was meant to be purely humorous. It was actually very sarcastic. It was very, I don't want to say it was rude or offensive, but it definitely had a lot more bite to it than the version that's here today. And there was a subset of people that really wanted to see that book. But my editor, mashallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward her, reached out to me one night and with a message, and she said, Amer, have you thought about, and she reminded me of the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam and how he approached his father, and the story about Abati, and how he, despite his father not being a believer, he was still respectful. He was still gave him the respect that he was due as his father.
Right.
She said, have you thought about taking that approach? And I'll be honest, I was resistant because I really like the idea of a sarcastic, funny, humorous book. But, we started working, and that's where some of those other chapters that I mentioned earlier were born. And we decided that, there are two sides to every coin. So instead of possibly, or na'udhu creating more fitna with a book, even, despite how humorous or how funny our intentions initially were, we can turn it into a tool that will one day benefit. Even if it benefits one person, alhamdulillah, then it's there. But inshallah, I really hope it goes on to do so much more than that.
MashaAllah, very good. What are your thoughts about how our Muslim youth can contribute towards building our future generations? Like, I see this as an effort in building towards future generations, future community. What else can our Muslim youth can do that you can give from your experiences of growing up in America, some advices, some nasiha to them?
There is no future generation without the contribution of the youth. The future generation will be very different, and na'udhu billah might even be pushed further and further away from either our communities or our deen, na'udhu billah, right? And it's because, alhamdulillah, even though, as Jawad had mentioned, there's people migrating here every generation, but we are now at a point in history where there are third generation, fourth generation Muslims here, and no longer is the culture from back home 100% applicable, and no longer is growing up here in the West the way to do things, right? Alhamdulillah, we are established enough that we have our own culture within the culture, and if one generation does not pass it along, it'll be a journey of discovery that could take generations, and Allah knows. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, but who knows who we could lose and how we could lose them in the meantime.
What are some of the issues that you have addressed in this book? Like any topics that you have in mind right off the bat?
It's largely focused on the struggles that individual children faced. We talk about everything, like, as we mentioned, the generational interactions, but also the environments and the types of events that cause them to happen. There are stories in the book about kids that grew up in an Islamic school environment. There are stories in the book about kids who grew up outside of an Islamic school environment. There are interactions with uncles. There are interactions with aunties. There are children shenanigans. And the idea is there's something in the book that should relate to everybody. In fact, the way we designed it, the way we intended it, is that it relates to everybody. And the idea is, see yourself, find a particular issue that you faced, however small or large it was, and truly understand that, one, I wasn't the only one, and two, there's a communicative path out of it.
Always hold the mic.
Always hold the mic, yes.
I like your idea about how your editor said that use the example of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and addressing his father with respect and honor, because as young people, we sometimes face this challenge, how to address your dad, your mom, your uncle, your aunt about something that they're doing wrong. Have you tackled that issue in this book, like in a humorous, satiric way, so that people can get the message in an indirect way, that if you have an adult in your house who may be doing something wrong, maybe praying the wrong way, making wudu the wrong way, maybe not following properly Islam, how does the second generation American Muslim interact with them?
To be honest, we didn't really tackle that in this book.
Okay.
This is more along the social kind of alignment side of things.
Give some examples of what you did, of what you wrote.
Sure, absolutely. For example, who here grew up in Islamic school?
Anybody went to Islamic school?
Anybody? Okay, a couple of hands in the back. You know, you guys had a very different experience growing up in Islamic school than those who didn't, those who went to a normal public school or, you know, an American private school. You know, just understanding how those kids talked versus how you talked. Or, for example, you know, those of you who have ever witnessed, you know, one of the younger brothers in the community stand up to lead Tarawih, you know, the amount of pressure that those folks face, right? The commentary, and how that commentary is sent across is always very interesting. You know, like I myself, alhamdulillah, I've had the opportunity to lead Tarawih throughout my life. I've watched my friends do it, fellow classmates do it, and you know, it's everything from, you know, there's almost that one uncle that's always almost practically salivating. He's got his little mushaf his hands. I'm going to catch every mistake that you're ever going to make. To the point, to the one afterward who will come back and tell you, brother, you should have done this or you should have done that, and not really understanding how or why the teenager or the younger brother that was leading the prayer got to where they were and what they're going to face the next time they step up to that plate. Other things like, you know, other things we go into, you know, the immense pressure, you know, mashallah, there's a significant subset of our community, children who will go on to go to college, who will go on to become doctors and lawyers and engineers, and there are those of us who won't, right? And there's always going to be a comparison. There's always going to be an ongoing dialogue, right? Whether in the beginning it's why don't you become, and in the future, see, you should have become. And the idea is that the kids who grew up facing that, they're not alone. You know, every generation, my parents' generation, I hear my parents' friends sometimes occasionally say, oh, I should have become a doctor. And I hear kids that are younger than me now going into high school saying, oh my God, I got to start cramming today because I'm never going to pass the MCAT, even though they're going to take it 8 years from now. And so on and so forth. You know, we talk about issues around hijab. We talk about issues around you know, personal insecurities, whether they're psychological, whether they're around your physical body type, commentary. You know, there's a lot of commentary around weight in our communities, and then this spans cross-cultural. You don't necessarily have to be Pakistani to face that, but I mean, you know, who here has been called, you know, who has heard beta, you're starting to look a little healthy. You know, healthy is not the English healthy, but the Urdu healthy, where you're getting a little bit bigger, you know. I mean,
in other words, they're saying you're mota.
Well, yeah, exactly. Or, you know, the one I heard most growing up was, beta, kam kha liya karo. You know, I was, okay, well, I'm hungry, what do you want?
Yeah. And you're thinking like, it's my food, I'm eating my food, not you eating your food.
Well, I was thinking, I'm the 6-foot-tall 13-year-old in the room, why are you telling me to eat less? But that's a whole different story, mashallah. And so much more, right? Like, I don't necessarily want to give the whole book away in the conversation, not because I don't want to talk about it, but because I truly think reading it is an experience. And it's sort of the way we organized it, the way people a lot smarter than me encouraged me to organize it, is in a way such that you know, you sort of build up as you work towards the end of the book, inshallah.
Good, very good. Give us some of your experiences of American Muslim youth growing up in the 90s in America compared to the youth today who are growing up in 2026, 27, 28, 29. God knows how society will be. So what experiences can you share? What advice, wisdom can you share? Because you are a second generation American Muslim, and there's a lot of parents here who have kids very young, and they are worried what the future holds for their kids. So maybe your experiences growing up in America can give them some insight of raising their children.
I think the biggest difference was simply technology. You know, what
there was
kids,
no smartphones back then.
There was no smartphones.
You used to play with toys, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Not games all the time on the screen. Did you hear that, kids? With actual toys that you can play with your hand.
You'll have to forgive Jawad Bhai. He didn't have video games when he was a kid, so, you know, there might be some resentment there. No. You know, it's funny because I grew up in Islamic school. I was actually part of we like to call ourselves the guinea pig generation of American Muslim students.
Why do you say that?
Because we were the first, you know,
they were experimenting on you?
They were experimenting on us, but they were learning, right? Like, I mean, nobody can
you tell me which Islamic school you went to?
Sure, I went to Al-Huda School, part of Dar es Salaam in College Park, Maryland.
College Park, Maryland. When was it established?
Oh boy, long time ago. No, I believe
1994.
1994.
I know, because I was one of the founders of that school. With Safi Khan, Imam Safi Khan.
And I was hiding from my teachers. So, but you know, I mean, I remember at the time there were 8 of us in second grade, and now, mashallah, you see class sizes 30, 40, 50 students, right? The entire school, I think, at the time was less than 40 kids across 3 grades, and now, mashallah, I hear numbers that go over 1,000. So, you know, a lot of development, a lot of discovery, a lot of trial and error had to happen over the last 30 years. But in that moment, you know, we were the ones that were part of the first generation, and we were the ones that were, we trained the model, you know, as it were.
So you saw firsthand what happens in Islamic school. We have Islamic school here also in Al-Wali Academy. It's about, 15 minutes from here. Many of our community members have their kids over there too. Many of our community members are involved in the Islamic school also there. So they face many challenges. Maybe if you share some ideas, they can learn from you.
This is a tricky one because...
I mean, as a student, when you were going through, you must have thought certain things that if I was the principal of the school, I would have done this. So those things I'm asking about.
That's what I'm saying. It's a tricky one because as a student, I have one bias, and now, alhamdulillah, as a semi-functioning adult, I have a different bias.
Oh.
The adult in me, the one who took the time to write this book, who's now watched, other kids grow up in front of me, says that the discipline, the oversight, the helicoptering, and all those buzzwords that you hear were necessary and will continue to be necessary. As a child who grew up in that system, I wish that there had been more communication around it. Instead of simply saying, no, this is the only way to do it, this is the way the Prophet ﷺ did it, this is our fathers and our forefathers and, everybody else did it. Explain the different schools of thought, explain the different options and the opinions. Educate the kids so that they can make their own decisions and own conclusions, right? Like Islam was never meant to be, and please forgive me, I might start pontificating here, but Islam was never meant to be a game of follow the leader, right? We are trained to seek knowledge, to educate ourselves, and to make educated guesses and opinions on how we live our lives. I think at some point, as we started to establish a system in this country, we may have forgotten parts of that, and that's why we have some of the problems that we have today as a community, right? We don't have the tools to do the research. We don't have the tools to develop our knowledge base, which is why we become so dependent on certain figures to guide us in a very exclusive way. And then, now the billah shaitan does his thing and people end up going one way or the other. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. But truly, the communication and the explanation, there's no need to hide or gatekeep information.
Many parents are on the borderline. Should I put my child in Islamic school or not? Public school is free. You having grown up in Islamic school, and now that you are a grown-up adult now in your 30s, what advice would you give to these parents who are borderline, sitting on the wall? Should I go or should I don't go? Should I do? So giving your background and then how your parents raised you, and they struggle hard to put you and your sister and brother through Islamic school. It's not easy. We know very well. I've worked in Islamic school, one of the biggest Islamic schools in America, Al-Ghazali Islamic High School. And Islamic schools always have challenges. The number one challenge is funding, money. They never have surplus, always deficit. But the parents don't understand one thing, that the fees that is going there is not enough to pay for the education. And sometimes it's not affordable. But those parents who are always on borderline, you as an American Muslim second generation growing up in this country and now that you're adult, what advice would you give to borderline parents?
So, alhamdulillah, I was very fortunate in the sense that I got to experience, I was very fortunate in that sense that I got to experience both. As I mentioned, I was one of the earlier generations of a Muslim student in this country, and so at some point when I reached a certain grade, the next grade just wasn't available yet. So for a few years, my parents did put me into a public school before pulling me back out again because another program became available. I will say this, and I say this as a student. It was amazing to experience what life on the other side was like. And I use the word amazing very carefully because as a Muslim student, as a student in Islamic school where we live in a very structured environment, it is glamorized, when we interact with kids from who went to public school, who only go to public school. We hear about all the cool stuff they get to do. Things like gym class and, all the broader type of field trips and sports games and stuff. And this is infrastructure that, especially in the 90s and early 2000s, did not exist in the Islamic school systems.
So what was your gym class like? Just push-ups?
Push-ups and, basically, or, just, it was recess, alhamdulillah, here's a ball, go do something with it, But just to finish my point, or what I was trying to say to answer your question, I'm starting to believe as an adult that Islamic school is the correct way. However, it's not simply just dropping your kids off in the morning and picking them up in the afternoon. As parents, as
Very
adults,
important.
even if we're not, I'm not a parent, so I unfortunately cannot speak to half the challenges, mashallah, that you guys are all going to overcome on a daily basis. But I can say this, is that the Muslim schools need the contribution as much as your own kids need the contribution. You look at any high-end private school in this country, whether it's Georgetown Prep, Andover Prep, you name. For your child to be eligible to go there, they require, apart from tuition, significant contribution from the parents, whether it's volunteer or contributing to the endowment or political connections or whatever. Why are we not doing the same for our Muslim schools? There is an element of people who drop their kids off. Mashallah, sister so-and-so, brother so-and-so is going to teach you all about the Quran and the Prophet ﷺ, and then they pick them up in the afternoon, and then they go do family stuff, and the next day they rinse and repeat. You got to get in there. Alhamdulillah, the Muslim community across this country has the most diverse array of skills, resources, talents, insert word here. If every school population, whether it's a Sunday school, whether it's an after school special, whether it's an established Islamic school, if every parent contributed even an hour a week, can you imagine what we would be able to do? The buildings would be in excellent shape. We would never need landscaping. We wouldn't need lawyers. We wouldn't need school nurses because, alhamdulillah, that talent exists in our community. So why aren't we contributing it?
Excellent, very excellent ideas. I hope our audience is learning some tips from Islamic school graduate. And the thing is, you have a taste of both worlds. You saw public school also. So some parents, they have this argument that I will put my child in Islamic school later on, like middle school or high school. First foundation, like elementary, I'll put them in public school. They have a lot of resources. Obviously, taxpayers' money is there. They have more things. So build a foundation. Then there's the other side of the argument where parents say, no, I want my child to learn Quran, Arabic, Hadith, have the foundation strong so that they go through Islamic school in the early stages, pre-K and kindergarten all the way to 6th grade. And then 7th, 8th grade, I put them in public school because they have more resources. They have labs, they have, experiments, things like that, resources. So, and the child would have by 7th grade fully known what is right, what is wrong, what is halal, what is haram, so they can navigate the public school temptations and desires and peer pressure. This is a debate that's going on between American Muslim society community, wherever there's Islamic school. In this debate, what advice would you give to both sides of the aisle?
In the sense of to the parents versus the children?
Parents, no. Would you say to parents which side is better, that have your child earliest childhood go to Islamic school, or early child go to public school and then later on bring them into Islamic school?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. So I'm not a parent, so everything I'm saying is from a one-sided kind of...
No, from your experience as a child.
From my experience as a child. So
We're not talking about you as a parent. We're talking about you as a child, because you face both sides. You went to public school, and you also went to Islamic school.
SubhanAllah, the temptations will be everywhere. Right? Even Islamic school. Because, alhamdulillah, kids are kids. We are a very diverse community. Some parents are stricter, other parents are not as strict. Some kids have cell phones, other parents do not allow their kids to have cell phones. And kids talk, right? That's part of the social fabric of being a child and having friends and everything. Kids will talk, kids will compare, and especially in this day and age, temptation is so broad and is so easily accessible that this comes down to, it's a multifaceted conversation, but the first step is, I go back to what I said previously, be more involved, right? Be in the system. Don't necessarily go snooping through your child's phone or belongings or diaries, or, do kids keep diaries anymore? I don't know. But, or whatever. Instead, just be present, be visible, right? Don't tell the kids to do something. Show them through your own example that, look, I am also doing it. If you're going to encourage your child to memorize Quran, then you should also be at least attempting to follow along. One of my fondest memories as a child was my father used to drive me to Baltimore to drop me off at a different Islamic school briefly, and along the way he would play a cassette tape with that week's Quran assignment on it, and we would basically memorize the surahs together. And it was a lot easier. In the car, yeah. Just repetition, rewind, play, rewind, play, rewind, play, and it was a 30-40 minute drive from Laurel to Baltimore, and
that helped you a lot.
And that helped a lot. And for me, it was a lot of fun because my father later in the evening when I came home from school would lead Salah, and he would be reciting the same surah that I learned, and I would be able to say, oh my God, I know it too, and there's a camaraderie, there's a bond that forms, right? I'm not saying that parents and children should be friends or anything like that. That's a conversation for people a lot smarter than I am, but show up, be present, and that's what will start that conversation. And I say this all the time, right? Like there are. This is not just about the religious side of things. This is the practical side of things, right? You want your child to lose weight, start running with them. I think as a Muslim community, we retire too early. Mashallah, in the non-Muslim community, there are 80-year-olds that are out there running marathons, right? Why are we sitting on couches, with chai?
Right. And the whole idea about samosa, because samosa and chai is like a good conversation starter, like strike. And I know in your book you tackle the issue of uncle and aunties, especially aunties. With all due respect, sisters downstairs don't mind, but some aunties are very pokey. They pestering. Why don't you become a doctor? Why don't you become an engineer? When are you going to get married? So how do you deal with that cultural aspect of aunties being very intruding in private life of a child that's growing up and telling you to do something? Like, why does an auntie have to tell you you should be a doctor when your parents don't want you to be a doctor? How do you deal with that? You do a samosa? Or run away?
It's not worth it, and you run away, and then,
So you avoid the auntie.
You avoid the auntie, you go vent to your friends, and then as you get older, you start to realize that, it's in the Quran for a reason, but inna Allah ma'as sabirin.
Good. We got to wind it down, conclude now, so I just have a couple of questions for our youth. How would you inspire the youth to read books and write books? Like, what advice can you give them to get into this field of writing books or maybe blogging or ideas and thoughts, so that they can have this motivation that, hey, if Amer can write a book, I can also write a book?
Yeah, absolutely. I never had any sort of aspiration to write a book. This is something that really came to life a little bit over a year ago, and then we ran with it. And alhamdulillah, it's truly by the barakah of Allah that I am sitting here today. Like, this was not a plan. This was not a logical process that we followed.
It was Allah's plan.
It was absolutely Allah's plan. It wasn't Amer's plan by any means. The biggest advice I would give you guys is it starts with communication. You have an idea, you have a story, you have a moment in your life that you want to talk about. Tell your friends about it, right? As Muslims, we are meant to be social. We are not meant to be hermits or, what's the term, socially isolated or awkward, or insert, psychological descriptor here. Talk to your friends. Figure out what stories you have and what stories they have, and as you tell them, start putting them to paper. Everybody is intimidated by the fact that, oh my God, I don't know English, I can't write. Trust me, there are famous writers out there that wrote books that the first drafts should not have been put out there, and the editing, the publishing, that's a whole separate process. The first step is just putting ideas to pen and page and just making it happen. Honestly, just like anything in this world, whether it's losing weight, whether it's memorizing the Quran, whether it's starting a business, you just got to take the first step and then just get out of your own way.
Very good. Anybody have question from the audience for our brother Amer? Anybody? Yes?
Sure.
That's a very good question.
That is a very good question.
Want to repeat the question so people can hear downstairs?
Which samosa is worth more, the veggie samosa or the meat samosa?
Because the statement says no samosa is worth this. So his question is, which one is more, veggie or chicken?
So I've been asked this question a lot since the book came out, and my answer is truly blasphemous, but I'm going to stand by it, and I will fight over this. It's not the veggie, it's not the chicken. It's, I don't know if you've had the ones that have spinach and like feta cheese in them. Yeah, exactly.
Who eats that kind of samosa?
Imam
Oh, he eats over there.
Exactly.
Samosa.
There you go. As a gentleman and a scholar.
I never thought you would work that, huh?
So,
variety of samosa.
Variety of samosa. I mean, I draw the line at potato personally, but yeah.
Anybody else? Any question before we start dinner? Yes.
How do you advise a person that's already in college choosing a professional career to also follow their dreams or passions?
How do I guide somebody who's already in college to follow their dreams in a way that's both professional and passionate? Was that the question? Okay. So my first answer is don't listen to uncle and aunties. Do your research, right?
Wow.
There is a...
I like that.
Yeah. And there's going to be a lot of people that don't like that answer, but it's true, right? Industry changes, industry evolves. The economy changes, the economy evolves, right? I myself was raised to believe that, you go to college, then you go to grad school, and, you educate yourself, and there will always be a job waiting for you. Well, guess what? Our politicians have all but destroyed that. So instead, do mashura, right? In Islam, we're guided to seek counsel, we're guided to talk to each other, and do your research. Don't necessarily choose a path because somebody else did it. Now, and I will say this, like, risk comes from Allah. The money will be there. If it's written for you, if you ask Allah for it, it will show up in one shape or form.
Very good.
I can personally tell you, I know auto mechanics, mashallah, that are living in mansions, and I know doctors that are bankrupt.
What a comparison. Auto mechanics living in mansion.
Yeah.
And doctors bankrupt.
Absolutely.
Subhanallah. Amazing. That's a very good point, because many uncle and aunties, the only reason they say become a doctor, become an engineer or IT professional, money, cha-ching. You're going to be rich. But you bring up a very good point. As a second generation American Muslim, risk is in the hand of Allah. This is something that the imams have been saying on the minbar for centuries, but sometimes uncle and aunties don't get it.
And we're all living this reality right now. I mean, mashallah, you guys see how unstable, how volatile our economy, how our world is right now.
People get laid off all the time.
People get laid off all the time. People get a job and then lose it again three months later. You get an offer letter, it doesn't survive. You start working at one salary and they come tell you, well, unfortunately, we need to do cuts, so either take a lesser salary or masalama. But somehow, alhamdulillah, the bills get paid. Maybe it's not filet mignon every night for dinner, but a lot of us in this country don't go to bed hungry. Maybe we're not driving the latest Mercedes, but the cars do start. The heat works in the winter, the heat works in the winter, the AC works in the summer.
Good.
And alhamdulillah, somehow we all chug. Trust me, I am the first person who needs this reminder, because I will stress about bills and I will wonder why I don't have a Ferrari in my driveway, and then I'll wonder why I don't have a driveway. So, the nafs is there and shaitan gets to all of us. But alhamdulillah, there's always somebody in this world who will have it worse. And if we look to them, it becomes a lot easier to say alhamdulillah.
Our trustee, Brother Nizam, has a question for you.
Yeah, I do have comments.
Okay. All right.
While you were talking, I looked at the internet. I'm sorry. So the internet says that they would recommend the book. And they would recommend the book because of the sincerity in the book. And I get that from the talk and about the questions that it raises in the community. So maybe you can talk to that just a little bit about if someone were to purchase your book today, what should they look out for? What should they pay attention to?
How did you do that, by the way? Used Claude or what? Brock? AI? Okay,
Yeah.
Those sisters who didn't listen to what Brother Nizam was saying, while Amer was talking to us all, Brother Nizam did an AI search that should I buy this book. So AI is telling him on his phone, you should buy this book because of what you found?
Some areas you got
Sincerity. Sincerity. So AI is saying that Amer wrote this book and the content, the AI skimmed the content and says that the book is written with sincerity, therefore you as a buyer should buy the book. That's Brother Nizam just doing search on a phone right now. Well, this is mind-boggling, amazing. We are living in an age of AI. And thank God AI saved the day that's saying buy the book. 5 stars. So it's $20 book, right?
Yes.
Can you tell a bit more, like what they get with the How much is samosa? How much is the book?
Yes, absolutely. But first, let me just say that is both amazing and terrifying at the same time. Like, I feel like, in the movie, I feel like I'm in the Matrix. I just got to unplug and just run for it while I can. No, but to address your question first, the book, we emphasize sincerity because these are truly our stories. Every story in the book, we went to some effort to make sure that no person is attributed to a very specific event by name or by attribute, but these are all true stories. You will have lived a lot of them yourself, or you will know somebody who has lived all of them themselves. And so that's where that sincerity aspect comes from. Like, we didn't write fiction. We didn't want to put it out there exclusively just to create shock and awe in the way that a typical comedian might today. No disrespect to the comedians. They have a difficult enough job. But the idea was, see yourself in the book, right? See somebody who you didn't recognize or didn't see fully before in the book, and perhaps develop a little bit of understanding as to why they are the way they are and why they act the way they do. Jawad Bhai a few minutes ago asked about the aunties that are always poking and prodding. Well, there's a story very specifically in the book, in one of the later chapters of the book, about that auntie in particular, why she is like that. Perhaps the financial, the social insecurities, or even the blatant racism and prejudice that they may have faced when they moved here, and the circumstances under which they moved here, and perhaps that gives a bit of insight as to why they do that. There's another story which was, subhanAllah, it took the group time to make sure that we wrote it properly and effectively, but there's a story where a group of kids playing hide and seek at a dinner party witness an auntie being for lack of a better word, dressed down by her mother-in-law. And they watch that interaction, and they turn to each other, and they look at each other with amazement, go, oh my God, auntie has to deal with that too? So, and the idea is to promote that understanding, that, we're all people, right? These stories are not unique. These stories are not different, but what makes them seem so different is because we don't realize that we all live them.
All right, we are running out of time. We have to start dinner. You can ask your question with Amer. He's going to be here with us till Isha, inshallah. We have to start the dinner because Isha is at 10:10. So we don't want to make it further delay, inshallah. Just let them know. There's a table in the back. He has books and his souvenirs. So just let them know how much each is, and if they can purchase it on the bag, and you can be in the bag and help facilitate.
Absolutely, inshallah. So the book is, inshallah, $20 for the paperback, or we also have a little Samosa plushie that we designed. It's unique. There's nothing else like it on the market. If you buy a copy of the book and the Samosa together are $30, inshallah. So barakallahu feek, jazakumullah khairan so much for coming out. Please tell your friends, please tell your family members. Make dua for me. One, please, everything here was never meant to offend anybody. The idea is truly to promote conversation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive me if I said anything that offended any of you all, and may He take us all to absolute new heights together.
If any sisters want to buy the book, I know there's nobody downstairs, but you can send one of the sisters to, or maybe Brother Saad can help. If any sister wants the book, just text Brother Saad or Brother Sohaib or anyone, Brother Najib or Sabi, and they will pass the book down, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, Brother Amer, mashallah. You did a great job. A big takbir for Amer. Takbir. Takbir. And like they say in Urdu, doodh ka doodh, pani ka pani, abhi kar lete hain. Did you really enjoy this? Yes or no? Yes. No, it's not good. Yes or no? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Okay, so they enjoyed it. And do you want him to come back again? Okay, so you are popular now at MCNJ. We look forward to you, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. May Allah bless you in your health, in your wealth, in your family, and your children. And your parents and future children, inshallah. We'll have dinner now. After dinner, we'll have Isha, and then after Isha, you can be with the people. You can interact with the author. He can sign the book for you. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.